The chamber was enormous, stretching upward like a cathedral built for gods. 12 thrones circled the central platform, each occupied by a being so ancient that their species had ruled the stars before Earth discovered fire. The walls shimmered with holographic displays showing thousands of worlds, all bowing beneath the symbol of the Galactic Council. Ambassador Sarah Chen stood on the platform below, her hands clasped behind her back. She wore a simple blue uniform with Earth's flag on her shoulder. Beside her, Admiral Marcus Webb stood silent, his gray eyes scanning every corner of the chamber. Above them, the council representatives looked down with expressions that ranged from curiosity to barely concealed contempt. Kelthar of the Vryn Dominion spoke first. His body was tall and thin, covered in scales that shifted color like oil on water. When he moved, his robes whispered across the floor. "Humans," he said, his voice echoing through the chamber. "You have spread across 47 star systems in merely 150 of your years. This is unprecedented, concerning, dangerous." Sarah said nothing. She had been briefed to let them speak first. "For 10,000 years, the Galactic Council has maintained peace across known space," Kelthar continued. "Every species that reaches the stars must accept their place in this order. It is tradition, it is law, it is necessary." A crystalline being on the highest throne shifted, light refracting through its body in rainbow patterns. This was High Arbiter Zixun, the oldest member of the council. Its voice sounded like wind chimes. "The accords of submission are not punishment, humans. They are protection. Young species are volatile, dangerous to themselves and others. We guide, we teach, we protect." Sarah stepped forward. "We appreciate your concern, High Arbiter, but Earth must respectfully decline your accords." The chamber fell silent. Not a single sound disturbed the air for 5 full seconds. Then Kelthar laughed. It was not a pleasant sound. "Decline? You decline. Do you understand what you are saying?" "We do," Sarah said calmly. "We've read your accords carefully. They require us to share all our technology, limit our military to defensive forces only, pay resource tributes to the Council, and accept your authority in all matters of governance and expansion. We cannot accept these terms." Another council member leaned forward. This one looked almost human, except for the 3 eyes and blue skin. "Cannot or will not?" "Both," Admiral Webb said quietly. It was the first time he had spoken. "We mean no disrespect to this council, but humanity has fought too hard for its freedom to surrender it now." Kelthar's scales flushed dark red. "Surrender? You misunderstand completely. We offer you a place among civilized species. We offer you guidance, protection, resources beyond your imagination. Every species accepts these terms, every single one." "Then we will be the first to decline," Sarah said. Zixun's crystalline form pulsed with light. "In 10,000 years, no species has refused the accords. Do you know why? Because those who refuse face corrective measures, economic sanctions, trade embargoes, if necessary, military enforcement." Sarah met the High Arbiter's gaze without flinching. "Are you threatening us?" "We are explaining reality," Kelthar snapped. "You have 30 cycles to reconsider. Accept the accords, join the council, take your proper place, or face the consequences of your arrogance." "Our answer will be the same in 30 cycles as it is now," Sarah said. "Humanity will not bow, not to you, not to anyone." The council chamber erupted in noise. Several representatives began speaking at once, their translators creating a cacophony of overlapping voices. Kelthar rose from his throne, his scales now nearly black with anger. "You are fools! Do you think your primitive weapons can stand against the might of the Council? We have maintained order across 5,000 star systems for millennia." "Then you have grown comfortable," Admiral Webb said. His voice was still quiet, but it cut through the noise like a blade. Comfortable powers make mistakes. Zixon raised one crystalline appendage, and silence fell immediately. Humans, you are young, impulsive. You do not understand the dangers of the galaxy. We do not wish to harm you, but we cannot allow your defiance to inspire others. The order must be maintained. Sarah took a breath. High Arbiter, we come in peace. We seek friendship, trade, cultural exchange, but we will not submit to rule by others. If that makes us your enemies, then we are sorry, but our answer stands. So be it, Kelthar said coldly. This session is concluded. You have 30 cycles. As Sarah and Marcus turned to leave, they heard Kelthar whisper to another delegate. The chamber's acoustics carried his words clearly. Ready the enforcement fleet. This will be brief. They always submit once. They see our power. Sarah and Marcus walked through the massive doors, their footsteps echoing. Neither spoke until they reached their shuttle. Once inside, Marcus finally broke the silence. They've never lost, he said. In 10,000 years, they've never faced real resistance. Sarah strapped herself into her seat as the shuttle lifted off. Through the window, she could see the Council's orbital station shrinking behind them. Then they've forgotten what real determination looks like. Can we win? Marcus asked bluntly. Sarah was quiet for a moment. I don't know, but I know we won't win on our knees. The shuttle accelerated toward the jump point that would take them home. Behind them, in the council chamber, Kelthar was already drafting orders for the enforcement fleet. 300 ships, more than enough to crush one defiant species, or so he believed. New Canaan hung in space like a blue and green jewel. It was one of humanity's newer colonies, home to 3 million people who had left Earth seeking a fresh start among the stars. They grew food, built cities, raised children, and dreamed of the future. Now, that future was arriving in the form of 300 warships. The enforcement fleet emerged from jump space in perfect formation. Each ship was massive, covered in weapons that had been refined over thousands of years. They had designs etched into their hulls, symbols of the countless species that had submitted before them. Commander Velnak stood on the bridge of the flagship, watching the human colony grow larger on the display screens. Send the message, he ordered. Across every communication channel on New Canaan, the same transmission played. Kelthar's face appeared, his scales a calm blue now. Humans of New Canaan, the Galactic Council has spoken. You will surrender immediately. Power down your defensive systems. Prepare to accept Council administration resistance is futile. This is your only warning. In the colony's defense center, Admiral Marcus Webb watched the transmission with his arms crossed. Around him, officers monitored their screens, watching the Council fleet spread out across the orbit. 300 ships. Humanity had maybe 40 defensive vessels in the entire system, most of them small patrol craft. Sir, one of his officers said, they're waiting for our response. Marcus walked to the communication console. Open a channel. When the light turned green, he spoke calmly. Council fleet, this is Admiral Marcus Webb of the Earth Defense Force. We appreciate your demonstration of power. Very impressive. Now leave our space. On the flagship, Velnak's mandibles clicked in surprise. They refuse? Even now? Fire warning shots, Kelthar's voice crackled over the command channel. Destroy one of their satellites. Show them we are serious. 3 council ships fired bright lances of energy stabbed out, and one of New Canaan's communication satellites exploded in a shower of sparks and debris. Marcus watched the explosion on his screen. All forces, he said quietly. Engage. What happened next would be discussed in military academies for generations. The Council fleet had superior numbers and firepower, but they had one critical weakness. They had not fought a real war in 3,000 years. Their tactics were designed to intimidate, not to fight an opponent who refused to be intimidated. Human ships scattered like a flock of birds. They did not form neat battle lines or engage in organized formations. Instead, they attacked in small groups, hitting weak points, then jumping away before the Council ships could respond. It was chaos. It was unpredictable. It was effective. The Council ships were designed to fight each other, if it ever came to that. Their weapons, their defenses, their tactics, all standardized across the entire fleet, humanity had studied the data carefully. They knew exactly where the weak points were. Small human fighters, barely larger than shuttles, swarmed around the massive Council battleships. They targeted sensor arrays, weapon systems, engine ports. The Council ships tried to swat them away, but it was like trying to catch mosquitoes with a hammer. "They are not fighting like civilized species," Velnak shouted as another explosion rocked his flagship. "There is no honor in these tactics." His second officer looked up from his station, his face pale. "Commander, we have lost 42 ships. The humans have lost only 7. Impossible! We outnumber them 8-1. But the numbers did not lie. Human ships darted between the massive Council vessels, using them as cover from each other's fire. When Council ships tried to pursue, they found mines waiting in the debris fields. When they tried to regroup, long-range human missiles struck from impossible distances. Marcus watched the battle unfold on his screens. Every move the Council made he had prepared for humanity had spent centuries fighting itself. Humans understood war in ways these peaceful Council species had forgotten. "Sir, they are trying to retreat," his tactical officer reported. "Let them," Marcus said, "but make sure they understand the cost." As the Council fleet began to pull back, human ships harried them every step of the way. By the time the surviving vessels jumped away, they had lost 120 ships. The humans had lost 18. On the flagship, Velnak stared at his screens in disbelief. Around him, officers worked frantically to contain fires and repair damage. "How?" he whispered. "How did they do this?" His second officer looked up, his expression haunted. "They have been fighting wars for their entire history, Commander. We have been keeping peace. They remember what we forgot." Back at the Council chamber, Kelthar received the reports with shaking hands. 120 ships lost. The enforcement fleet was supposed to be invincible. No species had ever defeated it. Not once in 3,000 years. "This is impossible," he said to the other Council members. "It must be a trick, some new technology they stole." But High Arbiter Zixun knew better. The ancient crystalline being had watched the battle recordings carefully. "It is not their technology," Zixun said quietly. "It is their thinking. They fight in ways we have not seen in millennia, ways we thought we had evolved beyond." "Then we use more force," Kelthar insisted. "The subjugation armada, 2,000 ships, overwhelming power. We will crush them completely." Other Council members shifted uncomfortably. "Is this wise?" one asked. "Perhaps we should reconsider. Perhaps we should negotiate." "Negotiate?" Kelthar's scales flushed red again. "If we negotiate with them, every species in the galaxy will think they can defy us. We must show strength. We must show that defiance brings only destruction." Zixun was silent for a long moment. Finally, the ancient being spoke. "Send the armada. But I fear we are making a terrible mistake." On New Canaan, celebrations filled the streets. The impossible had happened. They had faced the Council's might and survived. But in the command center, Marcus Webb did not celebrate. He stood before his tactical display, studying the recorded movements of the Council fleet. "They will come again," he said to his officers, "with more ships, more weapons. We hurt them today, but we did not stop them." "Can we win, sir?" a young officer asked. Marcus looked at the display for a long moment. Then he smiled. It was not a pleasant smile. "I don't know if we can win, but I know they have forgotten how to fight, and we never forgot. That has to count for something." The war began on a Tuesday morning, Earth Standard Time. 2,000 Council ships jumped into 5 different human systems simultaneously. It was meant to be the final strike, the overwhelming show of force that would break humanity's will to resist. The Council had calculated everything perfectly. Everything except the humans themselves. The first battle lasted 6 hours. The second lasted 3 days. By the end of the first week, the Council had lost 300 more ships, and they had not captured a single human world. In the Council chambers, emergency sessions ran day and night. The holographic displays showed battle after battle, and none of them were going according to plan. Kelthar stood before the assembled council members, his scales cycling through colors that indicated stress and confusion. "How are they doing this?" demanded one council representative, a being made of flowing liquid contained in a transparent suit. "We have superior numbers, superior technology, superior position." "They refuse to fight properly," Kelthar said. "They do not defend their positions. They evacuate their civilians, then turn their cities into traps. They do not form battle lines. They attack from everywhere and nowhere. They use weapons we have never seen: crude chemical explosives, kinetic projectiles, electromagnetic pulses that should not work against our shielding, but somehow do." On the occupied world of Kepler 442, Commander Velnak was learning these lessons firsthand. His forces had taken the main city without resistance. The humans had simply left, pulling back into the forests and mountains. He had thought it was a surrender. He was wrong. The attacks came at night. Small groups of humans struck supply depots, communication arrays, transport vehicles. They used the terrain like it was part of their army. When Council forces pursued them, they vanished like ghosts. When Council forces stayed in their fortifications, they starved as supply lines were cut again and again. "We control the cities," Velnak reported to his superiors. "But we do not control the world. The humans call this guerrilla warfare. They have been perfecting it for thousands of years." Worse still were the civilians. On every occupied world, the human populations refused to cooperate. They ignored council orders. They sabotaged equipment. They shared information with the resistance fighters. When council forces tried to arrest troublemakers, entire communities protected them. One incident haunted Velnak. His soldiers had found a group of human civilians hiding 3 wounded resistance fighters. When ordered to hand them over, an elderly human woman had stepped forward. "You will have to kill us all," she had said calmly. "And even then, 10 more will take our place. We do not bow. We do not break. That is what it means to be human." They had arrested them all, but the woman's words stayed with him. Back on Earth, Ambassador Sarah Chen worked 18-hour days. She broadcast messages across council space, transmissions that the council tried to block but could not stop completely. Humanity's communication technology was surprisingly robust, and their hackers were astonishingly skilled, citizens of the Galactic Council, Sarah's messages said. "Your leaders tell you this war is necessary. They tell you we are dangerous, uncivilized, threatening to the galactic order. But ask yourselves, what threat do we pose? We simply refuse to surrender our freedom. Is that truly a crime worthy of extermination?" The messages had an effect. On the Trell homeworld, protests began. The Trell were a minor council species, small and unassuming, known for their philosophical nature. They began asking uncomfortable questions. Why were they sending their children to die in a war against people who only wanted to be left alone? Other species began questioning too. The war was disrupting trade routes, consuming resources, killing council soldiers. And for what? To force one species to submit. In his private chambers, High Arbiter Zixun watched the reports with growing concern. The war was now entering its 3rd month. 3 months. The council had never fought a war that lasted more than a few days. Their economy was not built for this. Their society was not prepared for this. Casualty reports arrived daily now, and each one sparked more protests, more questions, more doubt. Then came the raid on Supply Station Gamma. Admiral Marcus Webb had planned it for weeks. The station was deep in Council space, supposedly far beyond human reach. It supplied 1/3 of the subjugation armada. It was also poorly defended because who would be crazy enough to attack it? Humans, apparently. 50 human ships jumped in, struck hard and fast, and jumped out. The station was crippled but not destroyed. Marcus made sure of that, because destroying it would have been a waste. Instead, his forces captured the station's main computer core. What they found there changed everything. Sarah Chen broadcast the recordings to every corner of Council space. They showed 10,000 years of history, every species that had joined the Council, and what had really happened to them. The forced submissions, the suppressed technologies, the deliberately stunted development, species that could have reached the stars centuries earlier, held back by Council regulation technologies that could have saved billions of lives, locked away in Council vaults. The Council had not been protecting young species. They had been controlling them, keeping them weak, keeping them dependent. "These are your protectors," Sarah's voice said, as the recordings played across 1,000 worlds. "These are the beings who claim to guide you, to keep you safe. But what they really do is keep you small, keep you manageable, keep you obedient." Riots erupted on 6 Council worlds. The Trell government issued a formal demand for answers. 3 other minor species joined them. For the first time in recorded history, the Galactic Council faced internal dissent. Kelthar tried to maintain control. "These recordings are fabrications, human lies designed to divide us." But too many species had their own suspicions, their own suppressed grievances. The recordings simply confirmed what many had quietly wondered for generations. In his chambers, Velnak watched the recordings with his own people. He saw a world called Vrintok, the world his ancestors had come from 3,000 years ago. He saw them discover faster than light travel. He saw Council ships arrive. He saw his ancestors submit willingly according to official records. But these recordings told a different story. They showed the threats, the intimidation, the accidents that befell the leaders who advocated resistance. "Everything we believed," his second officer whispered, "was a lie." Velnak was silent for a long moment, then he stood. "Send a message to Fleet Command. I request immediate leave to return home. I must speak with the Vrin Council. They must see these recordings." "Commander," his officer said carefully, "that might be seen as mutiny." "Perhaps," Velnak said. "But if these recordings are true, then we have been fighting the wrong war." The transmission reached Kelthar an hour later. When he saw that Velnak, his most trusted commander, was abandoning the war, he knew the situation was spiraling beyond control. "We must end this," Zixun said at the emergency council session, "before we tear the galaxy apart." "No!" Kelthar shouted. "We must show strength. One final push. One overwhelming strike." But Kelthar was no longer in control, and everyone in the chamber knew it. The Vrin Dominion was the first to fracture. When Commander Velnak returned to his homeworld with the stolen Council records, he expected resistance instead. He found a world already questioning everything they had been taught. His arrival simply confirmed their worst fears. 10,000 years, the Vrin High Council leader said, her scales pale with shock. 10,000 years of lies. We thought we joined willingly. We thought they saved us from ourselves. They saved us from nothing, Velnak said bitterly. They conquered us with words instead of weapons. Perhaps that makes them clever, but it does not make them right. Within days, the Vrin Dominion announced it would no longer contribute forces to the war against humanity. It was not quite a rebellion, not quite an alliance with the humans, but it was enough. Other species watched carefully. If the mighty Vrin could defy the Council, perhaps they could too. The Trell went further. Their philosophers had debated for weeks, analyzing every scrap of evidence. Finally, they made their declaration: The Galactic Council has lost its moral authority. We call for immediate dissolution and reformation under principles of equality and voluntary association." Kelthar saw his power crumbling. Everything he had worked for, everything his species had built, was falling apart because of one stubborn species that refused to bow. In his desperation, he made a terrible choice. He attempted a coup. It happened in the dead of night, council station time. Kelthar's loyal forces seized control of the council chambers. Detaining several representatives who opposed the war, he declared martial law across council space, claiming emergency powers to restore order and unity. The galaxy held its breath. On Earth, Admiral Marcus Webb received the intelligence within an hour. "He has lost his mind," Marcus said to his staff. "He thinks he can hold the council together through force, the same thing he tried with us." "Will it work?" one of his officers asked. "No," Marcus said with certainty, "because force only works if people are afraid, and we taught the galaxy that the council can bleed." Marcus was right. The coup lasted less than a day. Commander Velnak, now leading a coalition of Vryn military units, refused Kelthar's orders to fire on protesting civilians. When other council forces saw the Vryn standing down, they did the same. No one wanted to start a civil war. Kelthar was arrested by his own people. As security forces led him away, the former council leader's scales had turned a dull gray. "I was protecting us," he said to no one in particular. "I was maintaining order. How can they not see that?" High Arbiter Zixun, who had been detained during the coup attempt, returned to the council chambers. The ancient crystalline being looked around at the chaos and felt something it had not felt in millennia: shame. "We did this," Zixun said to the remaining council members. "Not Kelthar alone. All of us. We built a system based on fear and control, and we told ourselves it was for everyone's benefit. We believed our own lies for so long that we forgot they were lies." "What do we do now?" asked a council representative. Zixun turned to look at the display screens, which showed Sarah Chen's latest broadcast. The human ambassador was offering terms for a ceasefire, not a surrender, not a submission, a ceasefire between equals, with negotiations to follow. "We do what we should have done from the beginning," Zixun said. "We talk as equals." But even as the council began reaching out to humanity, a new threat emerged. Commander Velnak's intelligence division had been analyzing the stolen council records more carefully. Buried deep in the classified files was something terrifying: references to an extragalactic threat. Ancient automated war machines called harvesters that the Council had detected centuries ago. The Council had known about the harvesters for 500 years. They had hidden the evidence, suppressed the research, even eliminated scientists who pushed too hard for public disclosure. Why? Because the Council could not admit that there was a threat they could not handle. Because admitting danger would mean admitting they were not the ultimate power in the galaxy, because fear was harder to maintain if people knew there was something worse than council disapproval. Velnak brought this evidence to the emergency session that followed Kelthar's arrest. He displayed the records for all to see. While we fought humans for refusing to bow, this was waiting at the edge of our galaxy. While we suppressed their technology, their innovation, their warrior spirit, this was growing closer. The council chamber fell silent as the recordings played. Automated warships the size of moons, weapon systems that could sterilize planets, an implacable, emotionless enemy that existed only to harvest resources and destroy anything that resisted. "The harvesters," Zixun said quietly, "were detected in the outer rim 500 years ago. They were dormant then. The projection suggested they would remain so for another millennium. But recent data shows they are activating ahead of schedule. They will reach the galactic rim within months." "And you hid this?" demanded the Trell representative. "You knew we faced extinction and you said nothing?" "We thought we had time," Zixun said. "We thought we could prepare quietly without causing panic. We thought the Council's united strength would be enough. The ancient being's crystalline form dimmed. We were wrong about many things. Ambassador Sarah Chen watched the broadcast from Earth. When it ended, she sat in silence for a long moment. Then she stood and walked to the communication console. Open a channel to the Council. All frequencies. Maximum range. When the channel opened, Sarah spoke calmly. High Arbiter Zixon, members of the Galactic Council, we have received your ceasefire offer. We accept. But not because you are strong, not because we fear you. We accept because the galaxy faces a common threat, and only fools fight each other while the house burns down. She paused, choosing her next words carefully. Humanity proposes a new accord, not submission, not domination, partnership. We bring our knowledge of war, our innovation, our stubborn refusal to accept defeat. You bring your technology, your resources, your thousands of years of scientific advancement. Together we might survive what's coming. Divided, we will surely fall. But understand this, Sarah continued, her voice hardening slightly. We will not bow. Not to you, not to the harvesters, not to anything. We will stand as equals, or we will stand alone. The choice is yours. The transmission ended. Across the galaxy, billions watched and waited for the Council's response. In the Council chamber, Zixon looked at the other representatives. Some looked angry, some looked frightened, but most looked tired. Tired of fighting, tired of lies, tired of the weight of an empire built on fear. Send the response, Zixon said. Tell Ambassador Chen we accept her terms. Invite her to Council Station, not as a supplicant, as an equal. It took 3 days for Sarah and her delegation to reach Council Station. As her shuttle approached, she saw something unprecedented. Ships from dozens of species, all gathered around the station, not in battle formation, in greeting. When Sarah stepped into the Council chamber, she did not stand on the platform below the thrones. Instead, a chair had been placed in a circle with all the others, equal height, equal position, equal voice. Ambassador Chen, Zixon said, welcome to the Galactic Coalition. We have much work to do, and very little time to do it. Sarah sat down, surrounded by representatives of species that had tried to conquer humanity just months before. Then let's get started, she said. We have a galaxy to save. 3 months after the ceasefire, the galaxy was unrecognizable. The old Galactic Council had dissolved, replaced by the Galactic Coalition. Every species had an equal vote. No forced tributes, no mandatory technology sharing, no submission. Just voluntary cooperation between sovereign peoples who understood they were stronger together than apart. Sarah Chen stood in what used to be called the Council Chamber, but was now simply called the Assembly Hall. The thrones were gone, replaced by a circular arrangement of seats. Representatives from over 300 species filled the hall, and more joined every day. Species that had been suppressed for millennia were finally free to develop, to grow, to reach their full potential. But there was no time to celebrate. Because at the galactic rim, the harvesters had arrived. The first contact came from a mining colony in the outer territories. Their distress signal lasted exactly 7 seconds before it cut off. When the coalition sent scouts to investigate, they found nothing. No colony, no ships, no debris, just empty space where a world used to be. The second attack came 3 days later, then the third, then the fourth. Each time the harvesters struck with overwhelming force, harvested everything of value, and vanished. Their ships were massive, their weapons devastating, their tactics efficient and emotionless. Admiral Marcus Webb studied the battle recordings in the Coalition's new Joint Command Center. Around him, officers from a dozen different species worked at their stations. It should have been chaos. Different protocols, different technologies, different ways of thinking. But somehow, it worked. They are machines, Commander Velnak said, standing beside Marcus. The Vryn officer had become Marcus's second-in-command, a symbol of the new era. No creativity, no improvisation, just programmed responses. That makes them predictable, Marcus said, but also relentless. They don't get tired, they don't get scared, they don't retreat unless it serves their efficiency calculations. Can we defeat them? Velnak asked. Marcus was quiet for a moment. Alone? No. The Council couldn't have. Humanity couldn't have. But together? He gestured to the command center around them. Together we have a chance. The Battle of Rim's End proved him right and wrong. 200 coalition ships, a mix of human and Council vessels, met the Harvester fleet at the edge of civilized space. The Harvesters had 50 ships, but each one was the size of a small moon. The battle should have been a slaughter. It was, just not the slaughter anyone expected. Human tactics combined with Council technology created something new. Human fighters used Council energy shields to survive close approaches. Council battleships used human missile swarms to overwhelm Harvester point defenses. Vryn commanders learned human guerrilla tactics. Human pilots learned to use Council sensor arrays. The battle lasted 14 hours. When it ended, the Harvester fleet was destroyed. The Coalition had lost 47 ships. Devastating, but not catastrophic. More importantly, they had won. On the bridge of the Coalition flagship, Marcus and Velnak stood together, watching the debris field through the view screen. First victory, Velnak said. First of many, Marcus replied. They will send more, and we will be ready. Back in the assembly hall, Sarah Chen prepared to address the Coalition for the first time as its newly elected Secretary General. It was a position that did not exist under the old Council, a position she had not sought but had been chosen for by representatives from across the galaxy. The hall fell silent as she stepped to the central podium. Hundreds of beings from hundreds of worlds watched her. Just months ago, many of them had been her enemies. Now they were her colleagues, her partners, her friends. Members of the Galactic Coalition, Sarah began. Today we achieved our first victory against the Harvesters, but we all know this is just the beginning. More will come. Larger fleets, stronger weapons, greater challenges. She paused, looking around the hall. 3 months ago, this coalition did not exist. 6 months ago, we were at war with each other. A year ago, most of us did not even know humanity existed. And yet here we stand, together, united not by force or fear, but by choice. The old Council ruled for 10,000 years, Sarah continued, but it ruled through submission, through control, through fear. And when that system was challenged, it collapsed in months. Why? Because systems built on fear are fragile. They break the moment people stop being afraid. She gestured to the assembly. But look at what we have built in just 3 months. A true coalition. Species working together by choice, bringing their strengths, sharing their knowledge, learning from each other. We are stronger now than the old Council ever was, and we will grow stronger still. High Arbiter Zixun, now simply known as Arbiter Zixun, and holding no more power than any other representative, rose to speak. Ambassador Chen, Secretary General Chen speaks truth. The old Council maintained order, but at a terrible cost. We stunted growth. We suppressed innovation. We created a galaxy that was stable but stagnant. The ancient crystalline being's form pulsed with light. Humanity refused to bow. In our arrogance, we saw this as defiance to be crushed. But it was not defiance. It was dignity. The dignity of a free people who understood that submission is not peace. That order without freedom is not worth the cost. That bowing to power is not the same as standing with allies. Zixun turned to Sarah. You saved us, Secretary General. Not from the Harvesters. They would have come regardless. You saved us from ourselves. From our own stagnation. from the comfortable tyranny we had created and called civilization. Sarah smiled slightly. We did not seek to break your counsel, Arbiter Zixon. We simply refused to bow. And in standing tall, we discovered that many of you wished to stand with us, that you had been waiting for someone to show that resistance was possible, that freedom was worth fighting for. She turned back to the full assembly. The harvesters are coming. They are powerful. They are relentless. They are dangerous. But they are also just machines. They cannot adapt. They cannot innovate. They cannot be inspired. We can. That is our advantage. That is our strength. The old council would have met this threat with standardized tactics, overwhelming force, and rigid doctrine, Sarah said, and they would have failed. Because the harvesters are designed to defeat exactly that kind of enemy. But we are something new, something they were not programmed to handle. A coalition of free peoples, each bringing their unique strengths, their unique perspectives, their unique ways of solving problems. She paused, her voice growing stronger. We will make mistakes. We will suffer losses. We will face dark moments when victory seems impossible, but we will face them together, as equals, as partners, as friends. The harvesters think they face a divided galaxy. They think they face thousands of species too busy fighting each other to resist them. They are wrong. They face the Galactic Coalition, and they are about to learn what happens when free peoples stand together. The assembly erupted in approval, not the formal acknowledgement of the old council, but genuine enthusiasm, cheers and calls in hundreds of different languages. Later that evening, Marcus Webb found Sarah standing alone in an observation deck, watching the stars. He joined her silently, and for a moment, neither spoke. "Do you think we can win?" Sarah asked quietly. "I think we have a chance," Marcus replied. "A real chance. More than we would have had if the old council still ruled. Because of our tactics, because of our spirit." Marcus gestured to the command center visible through the window below. "Look at them. Vrin officers teaching human pilots. Trell engineers working with Earth scientists. Council technology adapted with human innovation. A year ago, this would have been impossible. Now it is our greatest strength." Sarah smiled. "We did not seek to change the galaxy. We just wanted to be left alone. And by refusing to bow, we inspired others to stand," Marcus said. "Sometimes the greatest changes come from the simplest acts, like saying no to a power that has never heard that word before." They stood in comfortable silence, watching ships from 100 worlds move through space in perfect coordination. The harvesters would come again. Larger forces, greater threats, but the galaxy would be ready. Not because they were forced to unite, but because they chose to. In the distance, at the very edge of sensor range, new contacts appeared. More harvesters, more battles to come. Marcus's communication device chirped. "Admiral, contacts on the rim, harvester signature, 50 vessels, possibly more." Marcus tapped his device. "Understood. Launch the alert. Coordinate with coalition forces. And somebody wake up Commander Velnak. He will want to be there for this." He turned to Sarah. "Duty calls." "Go save the galaxy, Admiral," Sarah said with a slight smile. "Again." As Marcus strode away toward the command center, Sarah turned back to the stars. Somewhere out there, an ancient threat was advancing. But humanity had refused to bow, and in that refusal, they had saved more than themselves. They had saved a galaxy that had forgotten how to stand. The future was uncertain. The dangers were real, but for the first time in 10,000 years, the galaxy faced its challenges as free peoples united by choice, standing together, unbowed, and that made all the difference.